First rule of blacksmithing is don't touch anything that's hot. Second rule of blacksmithing is everything's hot. Sheffield's got a good combination of resources and I guess you call it energy supply. One of the resources it has is lots of running water. And lots of running water that's going quite a distance because it's 70% gold. It's also got a lot of iron ore available quite close to the sea, collectible iron. So it was always an iron place. But it's always been quite heavily wooded, to show the forest until there were plentiful coal and coke supplies. There would have been a drought. They developed blast forges in medieval times. Those would have been water powered, bellows water powered. I don't know if they developed crucible steel in Sheffield, but they definitely used it a lot. Crucible steel is one of the ways that you make high carbon steel bladed tools way back before the body processing was developed. Obviously the people had the skills. It's strange now that you don't need blacksmith, but it would have been. It's not a difficult thing to learn if you pay attention. Anyone can learn because that's what we do. I came to Sheffield to do conservation work at Chatsworth back in 2014. I've been moved around the country doing various conservation-based jobs, primarily because they were the ones that were using the skill set I'd learned and refined, which is traditional hand-forged work, including power armour work and modern fabrication stuff as well, but predominantly hand-forged work. That was the thing I was chasing. I like Sheffield. It's got a good mix of the arts and crafts thing going on. The forging side of things isn't just industrial, or it isn't just small hobbyist, or it isn't just crafts-based, or it isn't just teaching. It's got everything. So it's the only place in all my travels, apart from like Lancashire, which is home, that I've gone back to. I think that's significant for me. I'd also like to be the Sheffield Blacksmith. I didn't really have access to any home foundry stuff, and I couldn't really do it where I was, but I could go and find local metalworkers, and I found fabricators. Got some general workshop experience and did a bit of like the going on site, learning the job stuff. And then the guy who I was working with, a chap called Adrian Davies, he would, at the end of the day, and he was showing me various things, and then he went, oh, there's some, I've shown you most of the stuff, but what I haven't shown you is some hot work. So he got a piece of railway track, clamped it onto a bench, got a gas torch out and a ball peen hammer, made a like shit scroll, and then let me have a go. The first couple of hits of me forging hot steel, which was only like a dull orange, and just mild steel on a railway track with a shit hammer, it was just like, well, I don't know how far this will go, but I think I'd like to find out. Just to talk about my hammer, because I like it. It needs a new handle. That's the third handle it's had on it. Obviously it's got the same hammerhead. And I bought that in summer 2007 at Bliss Hill from Terry Clark at the Barbary Jam, August I think it was. And then I started Hereford for my proper blacksmithing journey in the September. The reason why I haven't switched over to the proliferation of round-faced hammers that I've got is because this one works, and I understand this one, and it gives me more information than a round hammer gives me, and I prefer cross beam on this to other cross beams. friends that are tool makers and knife makers can talk about the metallurgical properties of steel ad infinitum. They're talking about ways of triple heat treating things and all this kind of thing, and I don't understand what's going on there because it's an academic process. I understand what's happening at the end of my hammer, or in the fire, or in the middle of a heat as I'm bending or forming, or I'm really relying on a little bit of input of what I know. I know mild steel's got 0.25% carbon or 0.3% carbon, and I know roughly what that does because I know what 0% carbon feels like, and I know what 5% carbon feels like, 1.1% carbon feels like. I can get that in the fire, I can hit that around, and I can go, okay, this is 1.1%. I can get some wrought iron and play around with that, and I can identify that it's got impurities in it using a couple of learnt tests. They work because you learn them and you get consistent results by doing that test. So I'm not doing like an acid test, or, well, my mates who's a metallurgist would use a XRF referencing laser scanning thing to, he could tell you the molecular whatever of the surface of the steel. That is useless information. A bit of it is known stuff, and then a lot of it is just experiential. You know it's strong enough by practice, and you know you've not destroyed the structure of it by burning it. It'll spark differently if it's been burnt, and then with some things, if you drop them on an anvil, they will sound different. Like the softer material, the deader the sound. The harder the material, the higher pitch the sound. Like, I know if I get it to a certain temperature I can do certain things with it. I know that it is at a certain temperature by looking at it, without needing to know that it's at a certain temperature. I just know it's hot enough to do a thing that I have a skill set to know how to do with it. So again, back to where I was, get back in the groove, pull it towards myself a little bit, rock it down, line it back up. Yep. The best blacksmiths I've met pay attention to what's going on. They'll see what's happening with the fire, they'll learn about what's happening with the fire, they'll try and change that aspect of it. People just have the fire roaring. It's like the bigger the hammer, the bigger the fire, the bigger the wrong. This is a controlled thing. Yeah, the best blacksmiths tend to just pay attention. Just pay attention to what the steel's saying, what the tools are saying. Listening out for all the exterior signs, but then also listening to what their body's doing and adapting that. I have tendonitis in a minute because I'm not listening to what the body's doing, you know what I mean? So, we've got a way to go. Back and through, pull it towards yourself. Yep. Yep. A real use of water today is as a cooling medium. The types of forges we've got here, which is my favourite type of forge, the English style of forge, this is a side draft, because the air supply comes through the side, through the chew line, has got a water shroud or a water jacket or whatever we're going to call around it, so that we can get air right into the middle of the fire, without which we can't control the fire as well. So you can control the fire for longer, you can control the air supply better. This setup does not work without water. Also, we've got a front bosh on it, so we can, if we can't spot heat something, we can spot quench it instead and control the heat by taking it out. Or, when we're done with something, just chuck it in there and quench the whole thing up. The other thing we do is hardening and tempering. Without the ability to add carbon to it, so using a real decent fire setup and alloying that material in, without being able to do that, and then without being able to harden and temper it, we wouldn't have pursued iron as a material, because it would have remained too soft. Without water, we can't progress into a useful iron edge. air and fire are just linked. We can't have one without the other. It's not a bonfire, it's a tool. It's an incredibly versatile, living, breathing thing. Our main control of it is the air supply. If we don't have control of the air supply, whether that's, you know, traditionally in a pit fire, like in a pit forge that they would have had at the start of the Iron Age, you'd have a guy with bellows and you'd be blowing air like that. But you'd be telling the guy what to do. It'd be a full-on team effort. Yeah. We've just replaced that with an electric fan and a slide valve, so we can control it ourselves. I can hear when something's wrong with the fire. Obviously I can't see into the fire, can't manipulate the fire with my hands, but I can hear when something's wrong because I've developed that relationship with that tool. It is an experiential thing. The more you do it, the more you're listening to it again. The more you pay attention to the fire, the more you'll know what a fire is meant to sound like. You'll know when you've got a cold spot in the fire, because it'll sound different to something being in front of the light. It's a mix of the sound and then, again, looking at the evidence. But when the fire is burning quite well, you don't have a lot of flames. There's not a lot of visual clues. I guess it almost sounds like the fire is a little bit further away from you. Like you're not getting as crisp or as clear. It's not like necessarily the noise level is any different. It's just like the tune of the fire is different. It's singing a different song. Actually, you're meant to have a soloist and you've got a band singing. Well, with an anvil, you've got different sounds anyway. So like, that's meant to be the least ringy because it's got the most support. So when I'm teaching, it's quite interesting because I can hear when they're using like the wrong bit of an anvil, and a lot of people will be working too into the middle or slightly onto the heel. So partly it's like the noise from the anvil is telling you whether you're using the right part of it, and if we start to hear like what sounds like a forging noise whilst we're bending, we know we've got too much energy going into the anvil and not enough energy going into bending. Likewise, like doing an upset point where we're very tight and we're hitting into the steel, there's a noise I'm listening out for it. It's almost like deadened. If there's a very slight delay on that noise, I know that my point's going to be offset because that delay is me moving towards the anvil. The colder it gets, the louder the noise is because there's more resistance in the material. So there's just different songs that everything sings in. When you get tuned into it, you might start to hear that you're hammering at like slightly the wrong angle because too much of the energy is going into moving the metal and not putting it in the place you want it to be. If I keep doing it, I'll keep getting better, which is pretty cool. And the better I get, and the better the work is that comes out of it, the more interesting jobs you get. Well, it's more like more interesting ideas that clients come to you with.